I never expected her to remember my name, let alone everything else. The corner cafe smelled of rain on asphalt and burnt coffee grounds, the kind of place where the chairs wobble and the walls lean a little too close, like they're listening. I slid into my usual spot by the window, letting the steam from my latte fog my glasses while I watched the street. Nobody was in a hurry, except maybe the buses, but even they seemed apologetic. And she was there, my friend's mom. I mean, I hadn't seen her since high school, when she was a shadow in the background of birthday parties and soccer games. She looked exactly the same, and yet completely different. Older, yes, but not in the way you notice with strangers. Older in the quiet way you feel when someone's been waiting for something you can't see. "Hey," she said, sliding the door closed behind her. She scanned the cafe like she owned every angle of it, and then, finally, she saw me. The usual. I nodded, hesitating. "Yeah, thanks." She smiled, a small, deliberate thing, like she was folding her lips around a thought she didn't want to share. She put her bag on the chair next to her, careful not to touch me, but I caught the faint smell of lavender. It was sudden, too sharp for a memory, and I flinched slightly. I watched her hands as she took her thermos out of her bag. The way she tilted it, the way her fingers lingered around the lid. It was ordinary, but it made me pause, made me notice. My own hands, drumming nervously against the cup, felt clumsy. "Did you finish your project?" she asked. Her voice didn't push. It just nudged. I shrugged. Words caught somewhere between yes and no. Mostly, just stuck on the last part. She tilted her head, eyes flicking toward mine for a moment longer than necessary. "Well, don't forget to breathe. Sometimes the last part doesn't matter as much as the rest." I laughed quietly, a half laugh that sounded like a cough. Yeah, I guess. We didn't need more words. There was space between us, but it wasn't uncomfortable. It was electric in a subtle way, like a plug half in, half out. I kept glancing at her, noticing how her eyes softened when she looked down at the latte she hadn't sipped yet, how she tucked a loose strand of hair behind her ear absent-mindedly, like she was trying to fold herself into the world without anyone noticing. I checked my phone twice, like I was expecting a text that might change everything. Nothing. Unsurprisingly. Just the usual muted notifications, old messages I'd never sent. "Funny," she said after a pause. "I was just telling your friend the other day. You're just like him." I blinked. My coffee sloshed a little. "Like him?" She shrugged, a little embarrassed, a little amused. "I guess you'll find out eventually. Or maybe you already have." Her words hung between us like smoke, curling and settling where it didn't belong. I wanted to ask, wanted to laugh, wanted to pretend I didn't feel it, that sharp tug of curiosity, the pull of something I wasn't supposed to know yet. She stood up, bag in hand. "I should go, but, maybe I'll see you again." Her eyes lingered on mine, a subtle pause that said more than words ever could. I nodded, folding the napkin on my table with unnecessary precision, flicking my gaze toward her hands as she disappeared into the drizzle outside. And then my phone buzzed, a message from an unknown number. "Can I see you tomorrow?" I stared at it for longer than I should have, and for the first time that week, the city outside the cafe felt small and quiet and a little dangerous. The next afternoon, I found her on the small balcony of her apartment building, watering the plants she'd clearly named in her mind. The city hummed below, indifferent, but up here it felt like a separate world, one she had quietly curated for herself. "Hey," I said, leaning against the railing. I felt awkward, like I just barged into a secret. "Hey," she answered, not looking up. Her fingers lingered on the rim of a clay pot. "You brought coffee." I nodded, holding the cup out like an offering. "Figured you could use it." She accepted it with a soft smile and a glance that made my chest tighten. I didn't want to overthink it, but it was impossible not to. For a few minutes, we simply stood there, watching traffic and pigeons and clouds that moved too fast. I fiddled with the lid of my cup, noticing how her hand hovered near mine when she adjusted the pot. The proximity shouldn't have mattered. It shouldn't have meant anything. And yet, I felt like my skin remembered something it hadn't met before. "I used to come up here with him," she said suddenly. Her voice softened, distant. "Not for me, or maybe only for me. Your friend, I mean. He liked to sit on the edge, just staring at the rooftops. Said it made him feel alive. I swallowed, uncertain how to respond. My friend's childhood flashed in my mind. Laughter, scraped knees, endless questions about everything. And here she was, the adult behind it all, the one who'd quietly steered him, laughed at him, watched him grow. That's nice, I said finally, because I didn't know what else to say. Her eyes met mine then, and I caught a flicker of something she didn't say. A warning, maybe, a hesitation. Life doesn't stop, even when you think it should. I sipped my coffee, tasting warmth and something heavier beneath it. A reminder that she was 42, divorced, careful, and impossible in ways I wasn't supposed to imagine. That she was also real, human, standing a foot away, and yet miles. I wanted to ask her questions, dangerous ones, about what it felt like to be her, alone in this city, with a son who'd grown up, and me standing here, too young, too aware, too curious. But I didn't. I watched her carefully, and she watched the plants, turning the watering can with delicate precision. Finally, she handed me a small leaf she'd picked from one of the pots. Here, she said, for your room. A reminder that things grow, even when they shouldn't. Our fingers brushed for a second. Not long enough to confess, not long enough to matter, but enough. Enough for a pulse to skip, a thought to hitch, a quiet acknowledgement that maybe we were both noticing something forbidden in the air between us. I took the leaf and nodded. Thanks. And then we stood there in silence, letting the city hum around us, letting the sun fall onto our shoulders, and I thought, maybe it wasn't the leaf I would remember. Maybe it was that small, impossible brush of fingers, and the way her eyes held a softness she didn't offer anyone else. I don't know why that moment stayed with me. Maybe because it felt like someone finally saw me. I didn't see her at first, crouched over the recycling bins behind the building, muttering under her breath as she sorted through yesterday's leftovers. I had come to drop off a package for her, a small, almost trivial thing, but in my mind it mattered. Hey, I said softly. My voice startled her, just enough to make her straighten a little too quickly. Oh, she said, blinking. A smile tried to form, but it faltered halfway. You didn't have to. I thought you might like it. I held it out, but she didn't reach immediately. Her fingers hovered near the edge, then pulled back. I noticed the slight tension in her shoulders, the way she kept her weight on one leg, ready to retreat. Thanks, she said finally, taking it with a careful hand. We lingered, and for a moment, the world felt smaller than the alley, smaller than the package, smaller than the space between us. I wanted to step closer. My heart wanted to step closer, but I stopped myself, noticing the way her eyes flicked past me, not fully meeting mine. She was resisting, pulling back emotionally, a little wall of distance I didn't know how to breach. Then the mailman came down the alley, shouting a greeting to someone behind us. She stiffened, stepping back instinctively. The moment broke. I folded my arms, pretending to inspect the package, but my eyes kept finding hers, and she kept finding ways not to meet them. I didn't mean to. I started, then trailed off. She shook her head, as if shaking away the thought itself. It's fine. We moved in silence for a few steps, side by side, walking toward the street. My fingers brushed hers accidentally, or maybe not accidentally, when she reached for the gate latch. I felt a jolt, quick and inexplicable like a wire sparking. She froze, hand lingering on the metal, and I almost said something. Anything. Almost. A friend of mine rounded the corner, laughing loudly, unaware of the tension compressing the space around us. She glanced at him, and I saw her shoulders tighten. Her eyes flicked toward the package in my hand like it was suddenly too much. We kept walking. The city noise returned. The distance between us felt like the drop of a curtain, small but insistent. At the crosswalk, she stopped, turned toward me with that faint smile that never quite reached her eyes. I should get inside. Yeah, I said, swallowing. Yeah, of course. We lingered. Her gaze fell on mine, almost holding, almost saying something I wanted to hear. My lips parted, half a confession, half a question. The air trembled between us. And then she stepped back, just a half step, and the moment slipped. Not gone entirely, just waiting like a breath caught in someone's throat. I watched her turn the corner into her building, fingers brushing the doorframe, and I wanted to follow, wanted to reach out. But I stayed rooted, the package still in my hands, my heart still in the alley, and a quiet ache settled in my chest that was already beginning to feel familiar. The park was almost empty that evening, just a few stray joggers and the low hum of city traffic beyond the trees. I found her on the wooden bench near the fountain, the one that always dripped with water no matter the season. She was staring down at her hands, twisting a ring absent-mindedly, the way she did when she was thinking too much. "Hey," I said softly, walking up. She didn't look up. "Hey," she replied, voice small, measured. Not cold, not warm, just careful. I sat down a few feet away, watching her shoulders, the tilt of her head, how she seemed to shrink into herself like she was trying to disappear. "You didn't come by yesterday," she said after a pause. Her words weren't accusatory, but they carried a weight. "I got caught up," I said, fumbling, always fumbling. "Work ran late." She nodded, her eyes not meeting mine. "Yeah, I noticed." The pause stretched. I wanted to reach across the space between us. My hand itched to touch hers, to anchor her somehow. But there was guilt in the air, hers, mine, something shared that we didn't name. I don't know if I should be saying this," I started, voice catching, "but I think about you. A lot." Her fingers tightened on the ring. I could feel the shift, the taut line of tension running from her wrists to her shoulders. She looked up then, eyes wide, a flicker of fear, maybe of herself. I can't," she said, almost a whisper. "I shouldn't let this, I know," I said quickly. "I know," but my chest throbbed with the truth I couldn't stop spilling. I can't help it. You're different. You see things that nobody else notices." She exhaled sharply, a quiet tremor in her lips. Then she laughed, soft, broken, shaking her head. "You think you're the first person to say that." "No," I admitted. "But, not like this. Not me." Her gaze flicked away, toward the fountain. The water shimmered, reflecting the city lights in fragmented, teasing patterns. I wanted to say something that would make it stop, this pulling, this ache. "I can't. I have to," she started again, then paused. Her jaw clenched as though she were forcing herself to hold back more than words could ever contain. I nodded, understanding, knowing. My stomach twisted in that tight, awful way when something precious is just out of reach. We sat together in silence, the city alive around us, the fountain dripping steadily. My hand hovered near hers, not daring to close the distance. My throat tightened, my mind racing with what could happen, what I wanted to happen, and what we both knew we shouldn't. And then she shifted, standing up, bag over her shoulder. Her eyes met mine, a flicker of longing, apology, fear. "Well, will you be okay?" she asked. I swallowed. Words failed me. My heart said yes, no, maybe everything at once. She walked away slowly, and I stayed, the quiet fountain spilling between us like the unsent words that would never reach her. At least, not yet. I didn't expect her to text me that morning. Not before coffee, not before work, not before the usual pause where the city feels like it's holding its breath. "We need to talk. Can you come by?" I froze over my toast, spoon halfway to my mouth. My chest throbbed with something like hope and something like dread all at once. When I got to her apartment, the door was cracked open. I knocked softly, heart hammering. She appeared, hand on the frame, eyes wide but unreadable. "Hey," I said. My voice was lighter than I felt. You wanted to talk." She hesitated. A silence stretched between us, more electric than words. Finally, she stepped aside. "Come in." The apartment smelled faintly of lemon cleaner and old books. She motioned toward the couch. Set. She paced a little, twisting a bracelet around her wrist, like she was untangling something I couldn't see. Something came up," she started. Her voice was soft but heavy. "I didn't think I should tell you before." I leaned forward, trying not to imagine what could possibly make this moment worse. "What is it?" Her gaze dropped. "There's someone else. Not in the way you think. Someone from my past. A complication. He's been reaching out again. I wasn't sure if I should." I blinked. My stomach dropped into my shoes. Not her. Not yet. Not like this. She looked at me then, eyes searching mine for understanding. I didn't want to lie, but I also didn't want to complicate things before you even knew me. I wanted to speak. I wanted to tell her it was okay, that I understood, that none of it mattered. But the words stuck somewhere in my throat, like leaves caught in a gutter. We sat in silence for a long time. I sipped the coffee she had set down for me, tasting the faint bitterness that matched the hollow twist in my chest. Her hands rested in her lap, fingertips brushing, almost brushing, as if we could share the tension through contact alone. I imagined leaving, imagined never coming back. I imagined asking her to stay, imagined the consequences, the impossible, the forbidden. She finally said, almost to herself, I don't want to hurt you. I want this to be simple. I wanted to laugh bitterly, wanted to shake my head, wanted to hold her close and tell her that simple wasn't in our vocabulary. Instead, I nodded. Yes, simple. Nothing else. No promises. No confessions. Just a pause, heavy and unspoken, like the world had exhaled and forgotten to finish the sentence. I left her apartment with the weight of everything that wasn't said pressing down on me. The street was wet from the morning drizzle, neon reflections trembling in puddles. I stared at my phone. Nothing. Unsure if I should text. Unsure if I should wait. Unsure if I could even trust the hope that had briefly flickered in my chest. I didn't feel heartbroken. I felt paused, like life forgot to finish the sentence. Her door closed behind me, and the apartment seemed to exhale too, leaving a seat empty where tension and possibility once lived. It was late. The streetlights had that hollow glow that made the pavement look softer, like it could swallow small mistakes whole. I found her in the kitchen, standing by the sink, hands wrapped around a mug that steamed into the dim light. Hey, I said, voice low, careful. She didn't turn immediately. Hey, she replied, a fraction of a second too quick. She knew I had seen her pull back these past days. She knew I had felt the empty space she left, and she knew I had followed anyway. I leaned against the counter, close enough to notice the tremor in her fingers, far enough to let her retreat. I've been thinking. My voice trailed. About all of it. About us. About. She finally turned, eyes soft but guarded. You don't have to say it, she whispered. I wanted to. Needed to. I don't care about the complications, I said, words breaking out of me like small flames. I want to know what you want. She cut me off gently, shaking her head. I can't, not yet, but I can be here, with you, like this. The mug between her hands trembled. I wanted to reach across, to close the distance, but I hesitated. Not because of fear, but because the cost was real. She could walk away. I could misstep. Everything we'd built in glances and almost confessions could unravel in one careless word. I started again. The hesitation lingered. I wanted to say more, wanted to risk it, wanted to admit the way she had settled into my chest, into my thoughts, into the quiet corners of my life. But I stopped. Instead, I just moved a little closer. Her eyes followed, registering, acknowledging without demanding. The space between us shrank. I could feel the warmth of her presence, her breath faintly scented with lemon soap and coffee. The world outside the kitchen, the city, the rain, the past weeks of uncertainty, fell away. We stood like that, close but not touching, letting the silence speak while we couldn't. I noticed how she shifted, unconsciously leaning toward me, and I let my hand hover near hers. Not pressing, not claiming, just there. Finally, she smiled. Small, careful, real, and I realized that it was enough. That in that simple acknowledgement, a shared moment, a soft gaze, a tentative smile, we were saying more than words could hold. Okay, she murmured, as if to seal the pause, the choice, the risk we had both taken simply by being present. I nodded, my own lips curving in quiet relief, quiet understanding. We didn't need to speak more. We didn't need grand gestures. In that ordinary kitchen, in the muted hum of late-night traffic and dripping faucet, we had chosen each other. Not perfectly, not without fear, but fully aware of the cost. And that somehow felt enough. Months had passed since that night in the kitchen. Life didn't feel like a storybook. Mornings were still rushed, coffee was still occasionally cold, and the city still hummed with indifferent energy. But somehow, in the in-between of all that, we had found a rhythm. I stopped by her apartment on Sunday mornings, around 8:47, just as the sun started cutting slats of light across her kitchen floor. She would already have a mug of black coffee waiting, the steam curling like a small, unspoken invitation. We didn't talk much at first. A few words about traffic, the paper, the world outside, but those silences were comfortable, like a bench warmed by the sun. She still twirled the spoon in her mug absent-mindedly, a habit I had memorized months ago. I found myself watching her sometimes, noticing how her hair caught the light, how she folded her napkin just so, how she laughed quietly at nothing in particular. Small things, but they mattered more than anything else in the world I had ever noticed. We shared errands now, small ones, grocery runs, dropping letters in the mailbox, feeding the neighborhood cats. I carried her tote bag once, joking about how heavy it was, and she'd flick her eyes toward mine, smirking, but her hands had brushed mine just long enough for me to feel that familiar warmth. Nothing dramatic, just presence. Evenings were quieter. We read in the same room, occasionally exchanging lines of dialogue from books or movies, letting the other's voice fill the space. Sometimes I'd glance up, catching her smile over a page, and I would think, this is enough. Not fireworks, not declarations, not grand gestures, just enough. I found myself recalling our bench in the park, the late-night city drips, the near misses and unsent messages. Those moments weren't erased. They had folded into the life we now quietly shared. They had shaped the rhythm of mornings, the pauses in conversation, the soft understanding that needed no words. One rainy afternoon, I made tea, too strong, bitter even, and she laughed, shaking her head as she stirred in honey. "You never get it right," she said. "I'm trying," I said, shrugging. She leaned back. I soughed and said nothing more. That silence, that small acknowledgement, carried 1,000 conversations, 1,000 confessions we never had to speak aloud. And that was how it became real. Not perfect, not untouchable, but warm, grounded, earned. As I watched her sip her tea, sunlight glinting off the mug, I realized that I didn't need anything else. I didn't need a declaration or a dramatic moment. I just needed this, the quiet, patient companionship, the shared glances, the subtle gestures that said, "I see you, and I'm here." I smiled to myself, folding the napkin on the counter the way she had taught me months ago, and thought, some things, once caught, never quite leave you. Not the bench, not the early coffee, not the quiet understanding. Not her. And I knew she felt it too.